And I will get the link. Somebody can check for me. Here we are. I want to be saying the right sentence when the recording starts, but it's always at a half sentence. So for those of you who are coming and watching the live stream, we're just getting started, okay? I will get the link. Somebody can check for me. Okay. So here is the link, guys. We are live on YouTube. Just a minute. Suresh, can you do the honors and just make sure that the sound and everything is coming and the YouTube live is fine. Oh, I see other people joining in. Okay, perfect. We're going to get started. Hello, everybody. I'm Sudha Jamte, and this is Weekly Wednesday or WeeklyWed on Business School of AI. This is our usual Wednesday time we get together for our global speaker series. And our host Sneha Jadhav is out this week. So I'm here to just kick things off. And then we have an amazing speaker and an amazing host who's going to interview the speaker. So let me tell you who they are. But before we get started, I need to tell you some logistics because some of you are here and you're invited to join us on Zoom here. So you can ask questions. So that means since we are recording and we are live streaming, just by being here, you're giving us permission to record. So if you do not want to be recorded, you can go on mute and you can go off camera and you can chat your questions. That's okay. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, I'm not going to be coming on YouTube and answering your questions. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to share this YouTube link on LinkedIn, and then there you can chat your questions. Even if you come and see the recording later and you come back and ask a question, that's okay. Olu is very, very active on LinkedIn and she doesn't seem to sleep. So I'm committing her time to come back and answer your questions for you. This is going to be a very different kind of WeeklyWed. In WeeklyWed, we are very big on being global and very respectful of everybody. So those of you who are here, make sure that you introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining from. And I'm joining here from Silicon Valley. We had a big storm. And so I'm kind of on a very choppy power situation here. And so I'm going to go off camera as soon as I introduce our guest here today. Okay. So let me bring in Olu, 1 minute. Add a pin. Here she is. So I met Olu a couple years back, I think a little before the pandemic. And I can't even find a word to describe her because she is somebody who's a community builder. And she's doing amazing, amazing things. And today's topic is the butterfly effect. And it's perfect because she's found the perfect word to describe her own work. She's given me a formal bio because I want to give you a full background because I read her background in the butterfly effect. And I believe that she's been very humble on what she's saying about herself. She's trying to give you a lesson. So she's focusing only on that aspect of her life. And she has more, even from what little I know of her. So let me give you the formal version of Olu's bio. So Oluneye Oluwole is the founder of Story Chess Consulting, a digital and innovative multimedia company, and African Hub International, a multidisciplinary enterprise development consultancy company. She's also the host of Storytellers with Oluneye Speaks. And that is how I got to know her. This whole storytelling community that she's built is about inspiration. Of course, it tells a story, it communicates, and it serves as a networking platform for the community. But she brings entrepreneurs, innovators, founders, professionals to share their success stories and their journey. And it's important, it's not just the success stories, because success is something that each of us get to define what it is. And that is something that I heard from Susanna Raj, who is going to be the host who's going to interview Oluneye today. So I have more about Oluneye. She's an international best-selling author. I did not know about the other book she's written and the how famous it was. And she's a serial entrepreneur. She's a poet. Of course, she's a keynote speaker. We've heard her speak. And she's a congressional recognition award recipient by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas for her leadership role, achievements in entrepreneurship, mentorship role to women entrepreneurs and youth globally. And she's in tech. She's a subject matter expert with experience across several industries like travel and tourism, media, entrepreneurship, nonprofit, and public governance. At her core, she's a relationship builder. I mean, there are so many communities out there and so many community builders out there, but she has an amazing energy and passion for entrepreneurship. So of all the things as a writer, speaker, troublemaker, if I were to describe Oluneye, I would say at her core, she's a true entrepreneur and she has a passion for empowering women. And she has a very unique style of leadership, which I found very admirable. She recently curated an anthology of stories of 20 women, thought leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and subject matter experts, just released in March. And I got a copy and read some of it. I'm soaking in each story as I'm reading because each of them is amazing. So with that, why don't I pass you on to Susanna, who's going to be our host. And you've seen Susanna here, so I'm not going to give much of an intro other than she is an AI ethicist and she defines success by her own in her own words, in her own way. And we can say that in words, but she lives it. So with that, let me pass it on to Susanna. Susanna, I want you to give a little bit broader intro of yourself to do justice, and then you take it away.
Thank you, Sudha. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for giving me the privilege of interviewing Oluneye. I'm Susanna Raj. I'm the CEO and founder of AI for Nomads, which is a startup that I have founded to help millions of people in economic empowerment around the globe, especially marginalized communities, the largest marginalized community being that of women. So I am part of that. I am also an AI ethics and inclusive AI researcher, and I work with multiple NGOs and global organizations like Women in AI, Data Ethics for All, Global South in AI with Sudha Jamte, and many others to bring inclusion in AI and to make sure that language and all other aspects of AI technology includes all of us. So that's just a brief introduction of me. And Sudha gave a very wonderful introduction of Oluneye. Nothing, nobody can give a proper introduction to Oluneye because she is beyond words, beyond any imaginable explanation that we can come up with. So I'm just going to straight away jump into this new book that she has launched. I'm so honored that I am also a part of the book. She chose me to be one of the 20 women who are impacting the world, and she is impacting the world in a very big way. So I'm going to start with her own words from the book as my first question. This was one of the most powerful statements that she made, and I just want to dedicate for the next 1 hour or 45 minutes to understand what she's saying here so that I can, benefit from it and all of you can benefit from it. Here is her statement. Yes, I have flown through the hurricanes, adversities, pain, hurt, rejection, betrayal, lack, loss, and loneliness. Do I have scars from these epic challenges and obstacles? Yes, I have scars. But I say yes to being stronger, smarter, wiser, finding myself, finding my voice. Oluneye, what do you mean by this? I mean, this is a power-packed statement. I mean, you have come out of so many adversities throughout your life, but after each one, it's not just that you have picked yourself up, you picked yourself and put yourself at a higher pedestal so that, it's impossible to even bring you back down to earth. So just tell us, how do you do that? How do you come back? And how can people like me and everyone watching here can benefit from your insight?
Thank you, Susanna. I would want to start by thanking Sudha for that brilliant introduction. And I started pinching myself if she was referring to me or someone else in the room. Thank you, Sudha. It's an amazing journey knowing you, coming in contact with you and collaborating with you. We started this journey during the pandemic, and now here we are. Who would have thought that just being in each other's, community would get us to where we are today? And that's how I got to know you, Susanna. And thank you also for that brilliant question. I would say that my answer to that, I hope everybody is ready to hear that. It's going to be power packed, and I'd like to, backtrack to my journey, my earliest, journey to entrepreneurship. And this was at the time that I was going out of the aviation industry as a ticketing and reservations manager in an aviation sales agency due to the toxic environment, work environment. And I asked myself what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go back into just working and then into another toxic work environment. And I also wanted to have time for my kids. My kids were, all three of them were less than 10. I had a baby around under 2 years old at that time. So I literally just jumped ship and said, you know what, I'm going to start my company, which is, a travel and tourism company. Why was that? Because my passion has always been in travel, in meeting people. I studied geography. So it was a no-brainer for me to say my first rodeo in entrepreneurship would be in aviation, in travel and tourism. So, but this was at the time, this was in 1999. This was at the time that there wasn't, the buzzword entrepreneurship wasn't familiar. I didn't even know anything called entrepreneurship. I just knew that I wanted to be my own boss, take care of my kids, and be able to impact knowledge to others. My passion then was to take students on tours to the West Coast of Africa. And I love, the exposure, because I come from a family. My father used to, take us on vacations, and I knew the impact of that in my life, because, education is not within the four walls of a classroom or in a school. So you get a lot of education when you travel, when you meet people, new culture, different nuances, people's, nuances, and you're richer in terms of your exposure, in terms of how you see life. So for me, I didn't understand what entrepreneurship was, like I said. So I had that intro into that crazy world called entrepreneurship. And I had that pull of having a startup. I didn't know it was a startup. I just knew it was my business. The pull of nurturing a startup, nurturing my kids, who are all under the age of 10, and nurturing my home. So in that crazy, period of trying to be the best on all fronts, in a business, I told myself I wasn't going to fail. This is not going to be a failure. And, that took a lot of time. It took a lot of efforts to be able to drive your passion without support from maybe mentors that that had gone ahead of you, or without the support of the home, network. And when I say home, I mean, my ex-partner. So it began to create that friction of, what are you doing? You're not, you're supposed to be at home. You're supposed to be taking care of the kids. You're supposed to be taking care of the home, me, blah, blah, blah. And I also had this passion of, making sure that my, I think my video, yeah, making sure that this baby that I had, this business didn't die. Nobody, has a baby and then, you want that baby to die. So sorry, my video is messing up, but I'll just, yeah. So it began that pull, from all sides. I became, not the normal wife, not the normal mother, because I was pursuing my passion. So all of these, were things that I was dealing with, and I didn't have any support, maybe mentor to tell me, oh, okay, this is how you're going to do it. This is how you're going to, downplay it here and all of that. So because it's a baby, it's something that I had created. I wanted to see it succeed. So this, my journey into the travel and tourism industry took me on a route that I didn't expect. And that was because, each time I take my kids on those tours, I made sure that I exposed my kids, my children, to the educational tours that I took those students on, just to, to have them with me, to also expose them. So each time I come back, I ask them, we went to Ghana, we went to Republic of Benin, we went to Togo, the west coast of Africa. And each time I come back, I ask them the question, where do you think you're from? And they give me answers that I didn't imagine would come from my kids. They didn't know where they were from. And I began, I was afraid. I said, who am I raising? So, they were perplexed because, I wanted to make sure that they had an understanding of who they were, because we would go to Ghana, they would see the way they dress. We would be in Togo, in Republic of Benin, they were speaking French. So I needed them to understand that in as much as you're going into the world, your identity needs to be secured. You need to understand who you are. But I didn't get the answers that I was looking for. So I told myself, I said, look, instead of beating around the bush, trying to, feel sorry for myself, let me look for literature, books on my country or my state. And I went to the length and breadth of the libraries. I couldn't find anything. And I'm like, how do I teach them? How do I, transfer the knowledge or their identity to them? So, and then I said to myself, you know what? You don't need to blame the government. You don't need to blame anybody. You need to fix it. So one thing about me is I'm a fixer. When I see a problem, I don't sit around, talking about what the government didn't do. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. I ask myself, what is this problem telling me? Is it telling me to be a solution to it rather than be a critic of that problem? Because it's not going to do anything. So long story short, I then told my dad, I said I was going to write the history of my state. And why did I say the history of my state? When I was working with the aviation industry, I was actually working with the Swissair General Sales Agency. And one thing that caught my attention was the monthly brochure that would be sent to the offices globally. And I would see the Swiss Alps, the snow-peaked Alps, the mountains, the resources, everything, the natural resources. And I was like, oh my days, this is so beautiful. How can I have something like this for my country. So when that opportunity presented itself, I just connected it that, okay, so I'm going to have a book that will talk about the history of my state. So when I discussed this with my dad, he was like, did the government give you the mandate to go ahead to do this? And I said, no. Then he said, so why are you doing it? I said, I'm doing it for my kids, for myself, for my children's children, for generations to come. I'm not going to tell my children's children, give them the reason and say, oh, the government didn't do anything, so that's why you don't know anything about your state, where you're from. I said, that the buck stops at my table. So he tried to convince me to do otherwise. But then, because I'm a fixer of problems, I embarked on that journey. I didn't go to the government to say, this is what I had done, come and support me, because I believe that your work would speak for itself. If you're genuinely passionate about it and you pursue it with all, sincerity, all sincerity, it's going to come through a lot of struggles. So I had to put a team together, a photographer, videographer, someone that would, drive the vehicle. And there I was. That was my first, rodeo to do documentation. And that took me to the length and breadth of my state. Now, don't forget, this was a first. So there are things that would happen, it was a first, we were bound to fail. Things were bound to happen. Just a minute. I think my video is, is it back?
It's not back yet.
Okay, just a second. It will
Maybe,
be back now.
there.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
So that for me was, another, opportunity to start on another journey of documenting my state. And this took me about 3 years thereabout, or 2.5 years to document. Don't forget, it was self-funded. I had to travel to document the history, the people, the culture, the food, the dance, everything about my state.
Wow.
I was doing this with the mindset that I was leaving a legacy for my children, that when they begin to have children, they will be able to first know about themselves, then tell their children's children, their own children, and my own children's children where they're from. So I think that was how, I flew through that hurricane again of documenting my state. And don't forget, I was still battling being a woman and being a wife. So traveling the length and breadth of my state, meeting monarchs, meeting different people in the state, having impromptu meetings to document, to do this, were creating this friction of being away from home and not doing so much of, maybe wifely duties or motherly duties. But I did my best. I did my best because I knew that this was something that I had to do, not only for me, but for my kids and, generations to come. So I would say that in the year of 2003, when I started this journey to document my state, I got an invite in the newspaper by my state. It was just a general public invitation to the first economic summit of my state. And I said, that's it. I'm going to talk to them about what they have not been doing in tourism. I said, that's my
amazing. This is such an amazing story, Oluneye. Whenever you see a problem, you become its solution. Wherever you see a lack, you become the resource. That's amazing about you. Where do you find that inner, pull to become that? Because you saw that your kids don't have an identity. They don't know where they are coming from. Most people would just look for a book from the library, and if they don't find it, they would just talk to them and tell them their stories. But you went beyond that to create a legacy for all the other children and decided to write your first book documenting the history of your state. I mean, it's just, and that, as you said, battling it out as a woman, against all the odds. For everyone that's watching here who is, in that toxic environment that you spoke about before, to find that spirit for entrepreneurship, where do they look for it inside themselves?
I think it has to do with listening to the inner voice, your own inner voice, that the moment that inner voice connects with what the problem is, and it usually we hear it, but we allow either the voices, the external voices to, kind of silence it.
Yes.
Because that inner voice, when I had that conversation with my kids, take for instance, I had that conversation with my kids. I asked my first, where are you from? She gave me one answer. I wasn't happy. I asked the third one. And then the middle one was like, I don't think I'm going to answer this question, because the first two girls, the two girls had answered in a negative. And, my mom is like, she's mad at us and, not knowing where we're from. But immediately I had that conversation with them. And that inner voice said, you haven't failed. It's just giving you an opportunity to prefer a solution. So I knew what I needed to do. So when I shared that, because you want to bounce those kind of ideas or the voice or whatever it is that is inside of you. And that's where you have to be careful who you share your dreams with.
Yes.
Because at some point, there's some people that will shut that dream down because they cannot attain it, and they transfer their inability to, to do something to you. Whereas you got that inner gut, that feeling, that voice. So when I went to my dad, your dad, our dads, they're like, your go-to when such things, so when he said, has the government, in his, very manly patriarchal voice, has the government, giving you money? Have they given you the mandate? I kept saying, no. And he said, why are you doing it? I said, because of my kids. So I could have backed out to say, to allow the voice of doubt, to overrule what I wanted to do, and then I would just be miserable. And the thing is that when you do not take that opportunity, I believe, I'm very spiritual, somebody else would be raised somewhere to do the exact thing that you failed to do.
Exactly. I believe in that too. I certainly do.
So you have to have that conviction of, hearing that voice and believing that it's something that you have to do. So that's just that's probably the answer that I can give to you.
Thank you. I think it's important, for people to never back down, because the vision about your life is only spoken to you, not to other people. So you need to always remember that. And this first book of yours, you chose to launch it in a very big way. That's the thing I love about you. Nothing is done small scale with Oluneye. Everything has to be big. And tell us that story about how you managed to launch it in a very big public, at a very big public event, and how those opportunities came along the way to you. And that's something I want most women to understand, that opportunities are always knocking at our door.
Yeah.
We just simply say no to almost 99% of them.
Exactly.
And so tell us that story.
Yeah, so the story, like I said, was me documenting my state. So I had gone to a couple of tourist attractions that were dilapidated, nothing was happening. So I documented that. So when that opportunity for an economic summit came up, through the advertisement in the newspaper, I said, this is my time to let the government know what they're doing wrong. Remember I said, I didn't hold it against the government. So I took the initiative. So now this is the time. Now Providence is bringing us together, me and the government. So when I got to to the event, the economic summit. And that's one thing that I want to leave with people. When we are at any public forum or gathering or event, be heard. Let your voice count, because you never can tell what that singular act of yours can do, not only to other people, for other people, but for yourself, for the kind of opportunities, because someone might just pick something that you said and build on that. So be heard, let your voice count. So what I did, I told myself that, I was in the private sector, this is the public. So I was going to tell them as it is, because I wasn't, in the government circle. I wasn't on the payroll of the government. So whatever I said, I'm okay. Nothing's going to happen to me. I just promised myself that I was going to say what I was going to say in a very nice, way, but, just kind of reprimanding the government. This is what you should do. So when it got to the Q&A section, I was patiently waiting for the Q&A. So when hands were asked to be raised, trust me, my hand was first to be raised. And then I started giving an account of what I had done. And what I had encountered and what needed to be done. And I found the governor looking back to say, who is that short woman, talking about, my state in that manner, like we're not doing anything, blah, blah, blah. I didn't look at anybody's face, because I'm in a private sector and they're the government. So it's either you take it or you leave it, but at least I have said my own. So when we broke into plenary sessions, like, breakout sessions, I went straight to the travel and tourism group. There were different groups, the agri group, the oil and gas, and all of the groups. So I went to the travel and tourism section of the group. So in that micro group, I then deep dived into what I thought the government could do because of what I had been doing on my own. So unknown to me, my name was penned as one of the board members. They were going to constitute a board of tourism. So I left it at that. I went for the summit, came back home, and then a few months after, I got a call that I had been appointed on the board of travel and tourism. I thought it was a hoax because I didn't know anybody. I said, the last time I checked, I think I did give the government a piece of my mind. So this can't be true. They should not, hire me. But that was the beginning of a journey to the government circle to say, you know what, you're telling us this is wrong. You fix it. You be part of the team that fixes the travel and tourism, industry in my state. And that was the first opportunity for me, in the public service as an appointed political appointment, that I brought the private sector drive, the private sector passion to doing things for the government. And that took us for like 4 years. So that opened up the opportunity for me to actually see the governor. And I said, look, I told myself, I've been doing this thing on your behalf, okay? On their behalf. Now that I'm done with the book, they can at least meet me halfway to say, I'm gonna do a launch. And this launch, it has to be a government thing, okay? Let's have the governor write the foreword. Let's have the governor, declare a book launch, and then let the book be a book of reading to, the children in primary and junior secondary schools, And then when I had the opportunity to meet the governor, he said, Madam, you again? I said, yes, sir. He said, what are your requests? And I told him the 3 requests that I had. And he said, oh, yes, okay, because he knew that if I don't give an assent to this lady's request, something else might happen. So that was how I had my first book launch at the state capital, and then having the governor, endorse it and writing the foreword, because I told myself I've gone this far, not for them to be part of what is happening, and that's it.
I don't know if the audience captured it. She wrote a book because her children were not knowledgeable about where they came from. She took the initiative upon herself to write the book funded it herself, did everything. And then she had the state itself launch her book. So this is full circle, like how amazing that is and how she did it. It's you just have to read that story in her current latest book, The Butterfly Effect. So I'm just going to, because she has written so many books. If we go into each one of those stories, we would be here for another 3 hours. But I'm just going to go to her latest new book and ask her how she came upon this vision and how she managed to overcome so many obstacles to finally launch this, and what does it mean for her to share this anthology with the world.
Thank you, Susanna. You're just taking me down memory lane, and I'm grateful to have this platform to share, my story. The pandemic of 2020 gave the whole world the opportunity to stop in our tracks and, just breathe and think. A lot of us thought initially that it was something that was horrible. Yes, people died. Unfortunately, may their souls rest in peace. But it was an opportunity for the world for all of us to reflect and think of what that situation was telling us. So we were kind of, all in our homes, not going anywhere. And for me, it was a time of reflection, reflecting on my journey as a woman, as a serial entrepreneur. And by the way, I didn't even know what serial entrepreneurship was until someone said, hey, you're a serial entrepreneur. I said, what? I know that I create ideas, I create businesses, and that's it. You give me that idea, I can create that business. So I didn't understand myself until, I was pointed in that direction. So I looked at the journey of over 2 decades of my journey, to entrepreneurship, to the moments that I had, my triumphs, my, the failures, the adversity that I faced, at home, in the society, when I took a political appointment 2 times. And, the second political appointment was in my local government. And it was like, a lot of people were asking, what is her problem? Can't she just, be like a normal person, and all of that. They didn't understand what was driving me to bring development to my people, to use the resources, to use the opportunities that I had been given. I had been given a good education. My father gave me good education, primary, secondary, university, and we went on vacations, so many opportunities that other people didn't have. And I wanted to bring all of that to people that didn't have the opportunities to share, to give them that opportunity, to use whatever it is that I could bring to them, to liberate them, to give them the wings to fly. So they didn't understand what was driving me. So I looked at all of that and I said to myself, what message would you be telling other women who find themselves in the same situation as yourself? And what legacy are you leaving? All these experiences that you've garnered over the last 2 decades, how are you documenting that? There could be women out there who are frustrated, who don't understand who they are, who don't understand their vision, who don't understand what it is that they're dealing with, or how they can navigate either entrepreneurship, either political ambition, either, being a social entrepreneur or whatever, or a creative. I remember while I was writing the books, I had a lot of, people say, oh, what's she writing? What's she talking about? She's writing this, people just disdain what you're writing, And I remember, just to quickly do a detour, when I was writing Dreams of a Patriot, that was in 2010. And, I said to myself, I was very displeased with the leadership in Nigeria at that time. And I said, what in heaven's name is wrong with the leaders? So I said, look, before I start, talking about that, let me go back in time to what happened since 1960. So I did, a 50-year a compilation of the leaders to understand where they missed it, who missed it more, or who missed it most, and all of that. So
Wow.
I didn't know that 10 years after, when that book was launched in 2012, I was going to present that book to Santa Clara's softball team, female team, as one of, I was a keynote speaker, and I had the privilege and the honor of giving them that book. So you can imagine. So back to 2020, and I said, how do I document all of this as a source of inspiration to other women, to younger women, to girls, to younger girls, to find their passion, to follow through their vision, their purpose in life. Not everybody's going to be bodacious like me. I've always been bodacious when I was small. I grew up in the outdoor, climbing rocks and, going on swings and all of that. So somebody who does that is, kind of bodacious in their persona. So, but then I said to myself that would just be, a skewed perspective, just people reading about me, that I want to be able to connect my story with other women's stories. Now, we had a problem. There was COVID. So how am I going to do that? But then I wanted to begin to use the COVID. Don't forget, when I see a problem, I look at what can we do. I began to see a problem. Women, we're not going out, entrepreneurs, we're just sitting at home. So I created storytelling with Oluneye Speaks. That way, we can keep our dreams alive. We can keep the connection. We can, we can feel that connection, networking, collaborating, it's Zoom, but then, so I began to travel the world with Zoom, looking, being invited here, seeing this event and all of that. And I began to meet different women. And when I get into the room, the first thing that I do, I study the people in the room. I observe what they say. I observe their comments, their contributions, the nuances, everything about them. And I begin to find that inner connection inside of me that says, can I connect with her or with him? So that began that journey. So when that time came to document my experiences, I then began to reach out to all these women to say to them, what do you think about this grandiose idea of mine? And one thing is, I always raise the bar, because there is no need flying low.
Yes.
There's no sense in flying low, because when you raise the bar, you're helping others to reach for their dreams. So I said, okay, we're going to write this book. It's going to be 30 women initially, to align it, because I always want to do it, to have a reason, to tie it to something that is greater than me, that is bigger than me, because I see myself as a tiny speck in the scheme of things in the world that is going to outlive me. So I said, okay, 2030 is the attainment of the SDGs. Okay, so let's pick 30 women. But then, when we started, oh my God, it was so, getting 30 women globally. You think it's a small thing. You try it, So I had some people say no, and I kind of understand, because if it doesn't resonate with you, then of course, so I reached out to a lot of people, looking at how do we bring the strength in our diversity, instead of reading stories, about me from Africa, from having a Canadian experience. Why don't we have from other parts of the world, from India, from this and that? And I spread, the invitation, across. So when the yeses started coming in, then I looked at it, I said, okay, we can't push to 30. We're just going to do 20. So we're still within the 2030 attainment of the SDGs, there's still 20 there. If it's not 30, we still have 20. So in all of that, I began to see, the need to leave our legacies, to leave our footprints, in the world, and leave a lasting legacy to help other women or other people find their purpose. So that was how the journey began. And of course, it's another first on a global scale. And whatever you do, when you raise the bar, yes, the bars of adversity, of challenges, of course, it's going to be multiplied. You're going to get a 10x, We did it, Susanna. We did it.
You did it.
We did it.
It's amazing. It's just, to see the thread in your story is that, like I said before, whenever there's a problem, she becomes the solution. Whenever there's a lack, she becomes the resource. But then she doesn't just stop there. She just makes sure that her first book she wrote, she saw there was a need that the history of her country was not documented. She took it upon herself to document it.